I just wanted to record a presentation that I'm doing on the Argentine presidential runoff that's happening on November 19th. I wanted to record it in English. So this is an investigative project that we've been doing into different Latin American newspapers. I did newspapers based on Argentine. Well, there are two main newspapers in Buenos Aires. La Nación, The Nation, and Clarín, which I don't know what that means. I don't know. And then El País, which is like BBC because it's a Spanish newspaper, and I read the section on Argentina. It's Spanish, and it has sections on Latin America in the way that BBC is British and has sections on America and Canada. And then the two candidates for the presidential runoff are Javier Milei and Sergio Massa. And Javier Milei is with the coalition Liberty Advances, and Sergio Massa is with the coalition United for the Country. And then right now, economic wisdom is something that's very attractive to the voters. Javier Milei is an economist, and Sergio Massa is an economist as well. So there's been, ever since the 19th century, there's been a history of economic and financial problems that have led to this point in time that makes economists very attractive as leaders. In the 1890s, 1891, they had the Barings crisis, and it caused strain in the Argentine economic system. The economic systems back then in the Americas were very different than they are now. So it's hard to compare, but basically, people didn't trust physical or like paper IOUs, and they were hoarding the specie, or what we now would call coin variant of the currency. And so in the treasury, they had too many bills, and the public had too many of the physical hard coins. And that's a problem that foreshadows a problem that happened in 2001. And then after the Argentine military dictatorship that invaded the Falkland Islands, you had the Austral, which is a currency that the Argentine government, or that was put forward in Argentina, and it was about like the mid 80s or the late 80s, and the Austral was inflated a lot. And I've seen graphs that say that inflation is really strongly tied with public spending in Argentina. I don't know if that's universally true, but public spending and public debt as well, which makes sense because if you have a brutal military regime, then you need to refinance. And my friend Juan, he's told me that his parents said that during the time when the Austral was in, you could go into the grocery store and buy something, and by the time you reach the cash register, the price could be completely different. And then in the 90s, in response to this, there was this president called Carlos Menem, and he was quite a character. He played soccer with Maradona. He played basketball with some professional basketball players. He drove a Ferrari. And he pegged the peso at the dollar, quite like the way the US dollar was pegged to gold up until about the 70s. I don't really know when. And he did that as like an effort to build a platform saying that he was going to stabilize the economy. And he did through the 90s, really. But then in 2001, there was a financial collapse. And there was massive inflation. And what happened was, as soon as people would pull their pesos out of their bank accounts, they would trade them in for dollars, because the dollars and pesos were pegged at parity. And so the federal national treasury had way too many pesos, and the people had way too many foreign currencies, making it so that the peso, there wasn't enough public stock in the peso. And so the government, the federal government froze everyone's bank accounts in the entire country. And corralito in Spanish means like a baby's playpen. Um, so that's why they call it corralito. And that's why up until today, people in Argentina have a hard time trusting banks. And then in 2015, Mauricio Macri, the only president of Argentina so far in the 21st century that hasn't been Peronist, he was president when Argentina took out the largest loan in IMF history, which I assume had mixed reactions from the Argentine people. I'm sure it brought hope that there was more money coming in, but then also worry that they're building up big debt. And then a few years later, the following president, Alberto Fernandez, who's the president right now, stopped the payments, or like the payment, but like the installation of the loan from the IMF. So Argentina actually has ended up not accepting the entire loan. I think they accepted maybe about half or 2/3 of the loan at the end of the day. But then the pandemic came and it caught Argentina at a really bad time, and they had to drive up public spending just because of need. And so now the national debt that Argentina has is a huge problem going into this election. And this is the slide I have on Milei, but I'm going to go to the next one. Sergio Massa, who in the first round of presidential elections got the most votes. He's the current minister of the economy. And it says here on the website that they work for an inclusive economy that's productively dynamic, microeconomically stable, with federal and sovereign equity. And so the way to see how the two candidates are positioned right now is how they're positioning each other and positioned against each other. Sergio Massa is the head of the Minister of Economy as of last summer, or summer 2022. And so he has to hold in line or hold in tension the desires of foreign debt holders, the federal government, and the provinces, which have not received payments from the federal government, expected payments from the federal government in the last few years because of money problems. And so the provinces have had a lack of funding from the federal government. And then also he has to hold the desires of the people who have to deal with massive inflation day in and day out in tension as well. So he has to keep everyone happy. And something that Argentina has done in this way, in this kind of vein before, is just being really open to really, really wealthy foreign investors. Like Patrick, I'm sure, but there's stories of people just like, I think there's some British guy who bought a lake in southern Argentina, and he owns, it's his lake. And because just being open to people with lots of money, like individuals that don't have conflicts of interest with lots of money, is something that Argentina has sought in the past to meet everyone's desires. But when you look at the way that Massa and Milei are pitted against each other, or positioned right now in this political season leading up to the November 19 electoral runoff, Massa is kind of like the stable guy who's gonna meet everyone's desires. And Milei is kind of he's the outsider economist who's going to come in and cut all the spending. A big statement that he made like a month ago is that he's going to cut some of the tax returns on the VAT. And the way that Milei positions himself against Massa is that he's going to come in and just cut spending and be frugal. And Massa positions himself as someone who's thoughtful and isn't going to do something so rash that would cause instability. Something that Massa said a few weeks ago at a rally was that he's not going to go in there and make a bunch of cuts with a chainsaw, like Milei is. Yeah, so that's where we are today.